In this video, we'll be talking about how the nerve impulses are conducted through a neuron. Now, when we talk of neuron, it is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system or the neural system, because it is this structure that allows the conduction of the nerve impulse. Now, let us try and understand how the nerve impulses are generated and conducted, because it's a highly complex mechanism and also is very quick to respond to various kinds of stimuli. So what mechanism is there that enables the nerves to ready to first to conduct the impulse or the stimuli, and also to be ready to receive the second stimuli and pass on the information. Now, when we talk of the neurons, neurons are actually excitable. Excitable means that they first are in the resting state and later on they enter into the excited stage, or they have the action potential. And the reason for the neurons to be in the resting stage is because of the reason that the axon membrane, we know the structure of the neuron, and the neuron has an extended part. The dendrites are the structure that receive the signal or the stimulus and pass it on to the axon. Now, when we talk of the axon membrane, this is the axon, and here the axon inside, shown in the red dots, is the exoplasm, and this is the outside fluid. The axon has the axon membrane, which is marked over here, and this axon membrane during the resting stage is more permeable to potassium ions. We know the polarity is maintained due to the development of positive and the negative charge. So what is happening over here? The conditions that cause the polarity of the axon membrane is due to the nature of the axon membrane to allow more potassium ions to pass through the membrane. Also, at the resting stage, the membrane is impermeable, that is, it does not allow the sodium ions and the negatively charged proteins to move out. So what happens, there is a development of the polarity. It is negative, it does not allow the sodium, that is the Na plus ions, and the negatively charged proteins to pass across, which are present in the exoplasm. Now, as a result, what happens is the exoplasm inside the axon develops the fluid outside. What happens is, due to this permeability, the exoplasm has high concentration of potassium ions and low concentration of sodium ions and the negatively charged proteins. On the contrary, the fluid which is present outside the exoplasm, which is marked as blue, has low concentration of sodium ions, potassium ions, and high concentration of sodium ion and the negatively charged proteins. So what happens is, this creates a concentration gradient. Now, one important thing is the sodium potassium pump. This pump actually helps in maintaining the ionic gradient of the axon membrane. It allows the development of the positive charge outside the membrane, and inside there is the negative charge. This potential which is developed, or this concentration gradient which is developed at the resting stage, is known as resting potential. And during this resting potential, the axon membrane is actually having the positive charge outside, and inside it is the negative charge. Now, when a stimulus is applied at a site, that means it is at the resting stage. Now, when on allowing the stimulus to enter at a particular point, when the stimulus reaches this point, then the polarity changes. And how this polarity changes? Because there is a quick influx or coming of sodium ions due to the reversal of polarity. Earlier, the membrane was not permeable to sodium ions. Now, also, you have to understand that the sodium potassium pump actually transportation is 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ion in. That's why the positive charge develops over here. And negative proteins are impermeable, so they are present inside only. So for every 3 sodium ion which is moving out, 2 potassium are allowed in, and therefore the polarity is developed. Now the stimulus changes this polarity, and as a result, the membrane becomes freely permeable to sodium ions. And as a result, this sodium ions quickly move in, and as a result, the outer surface of the membrane, suppose this is the place where the stimulus take place, there will be an influx of sodium, rapid influx, and as a result the outer surface will now become negatively charged and the inner becomes positively charged, because the sodium ion has entered in large numbers inside the membrane, and the polarity of the membrane is therefore reversed, and we call this as depolarization. So what is happening over here? Sodium ions are entering inside rapidly, and so this will now be positive and inside will develop the negative charge. So this is known as depolarization. क्योंकि हमने क्या किया इसमें depolarization, because here the polarity has changed, and the electrical potential difference which is developed at the site A, that is the site where the stimulus has taken place, is known as the action potential, because it is here the depolarization process has actually begun. So site A will be the action potential or the site for the stimulus, and is also the nerve impulse. Now, the gradually as the depolarization take place, it will move from here, that is the complete process will take place, and the positive side, it will gradually or change over this side. Now, the result is the current inside, that is the electric current, flows from site B to site A, that is towards the outside. So if this is, we talk of site B where the depolarization is almost ending, and here the site A, the movement of current is this, whereas inside it is taking place in this direction. So it is opposite, and the action potential is generated at site B, and therefore the impulse is always carried from site A to site B within the axon, and it is passed on. Now this sequence is repeated multiple times and is finally conducted. Now this result, the action of stimulus on the permeability of the sodium, is very short lived, because that the impulses can be carried, or the stimulus can be carried repeatedly very quickly by the nerves. So the nerve has to go back to its resting stage so as to prepare itself to receive the next stimulus. और ये तभी होगा जब the nerves reach the resting phase. So what happens is the permeability of sodium again goes back to stage 1. That is, soon after this has passed, the membrane will lose its permeability to sodium and will soon become impermeable to sodium ion and also to negatively charged protein, entering into the resting stage and finally becoming ready to receive another stimulation. So over here we find that it is the sodium potassium pump that helps in the development of the polarity, and after the receiving of the stimulus the membrane becomes more permeable to sodium ions, and due to the high influx of the sodium ion at the site of the stimulus the change in the polarity takes place, and the conduction of the nerve impulse outside, it is in the within the fluid is from B to A, and inside it is in the opposite direction. And soon after the phase has passed or this polarity has changed, that is depolarization has taken place, the membrane at the site of the stimulus will again become impermeable to sodium ions and will restore the resting potential. In other terms, it is ready to accept the next stimulus.